So with that, let's get started with our session today. And it's a great debate. We're talking about generations and how generations may lean into their product purchasing decisions in very different ways and what's influencing them. And we're going to be taking a data-driven approach with two of our esteemed data gurus, analysts here. We have Amanda Hart, and Amanda is with New Hope Network, and Chloe, I forgot your name. Sophie. I'm so bad. Sorry, people. And Sophie is with Innova, and we're going to start out with, I'm going to give you guys this in just a moment. As you can see. And what we're going to be doing here is a little bit different in our format. We're going to be posing some information and then supporting that with data. And then we want to ask you what you think. We want to see what your ideas are about how a generational perspective may be influencing these purchasing decisions. So I'm going to let Sophie speak first a little bit about your approach, and then Amanda, and then we'll proceed.
Yeah. Good. Hi everyone, my name is Sophie Cote. I'm from Innova Market Insight. I'm an account manager. So here at Innova, what we do is we have three main data points. So we're going to look at new product launches. So we have shoppers that go in 90 different countries and they go pick up the new products that they find on the shelves, whether that's a grocery store, convenience store, or even online. And then from that, we can extract some trends. We also have consumer insights, which is what we're going to dive more into today. And finally, we have some market sizing. That's it.
So I'm going to kick us off with our first insight of the day. Gosh, it's loud in here. Oh my gosh, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I can't hear myself, so that's better for me. Sorry for you, but so don't know which screen to look at. Okay, so we're with the consulting and market research group with New Hope Network. It's a startup team where we've been doing consumer surveys for the last several years, and we cut our research and surveys by generation: millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, as well as baby boomers and the silent generation. So our first takeaway is millennials indicate they are most willing to vote with their dollars, motivated by more than just pessimism about the food system. As for almost 50% of millennials, it's in their DNA to say that they're willing to pay more for responsible products. So now here's the data to reflect this comment. When we look at questions like, or statements, we ask consumers to evaluate how much they agree or disagree with these statements. That statement is reflected in the gray bar: willing to spend more to support businesses who act in a socially and environmentally responsible manner. We see that ticks up from 25% for the baby boomer silent generation up to 49% for millennials. And this is top two box agree with this statement. And then I wanted to contrast that with another statement, which is our food system is grossly lacking when it comes to human and environmental and resource efficiency. And we see that millennials indicate 37% are in agreement with this statement. So what this tells me is that there is not a direct, equal, and opposite reaction of pessimism to willing to pay more. Millennials are just, they're 37%, over a third are pessimistic, but they're also just indicating what they think commerce really should look like, and they're willing to invest their dollars into that space. The other note here is for Gen Z on this slide. I just want you to ground you in who that generation is. They are ages 12 to 26, but this survey is based on the adult population, so this is 18 to 26 is our threshold. So Gen Zs are still gaining their purchasing power. They're still going to express themselves in the marketplace. And this is where they sit now. 40% say they're willing to pay more, but they are most pessimistic about the food system, 45%. So that pink bar is a little longer than that gray bar. It'll be interesting to see how this generation evolves and how much that pessimism is going to really inform their willingness to pay more.
Thank you, Amanda, on that. I have children in both of those latter generations, and my son is studying sustainable food systems because he's pretty pessimistic about the future, and he wants to have an impact on that. So I just want to ask the audience here too, when you think about that, when you think about the youngest generation that's noted here, lagging behind, again, they don't have the purchasing power. Any thoughts about where you think that impact will be, or what do you think might happen down the line? Any thoughts here? Too obvious. All right, well, we're going to see a shift. So we're going to move on to Sophie.
Good. So millennials are even more engaged on social media than the Gen Z, so than the 18 to 26 years old consumers. So especially when it comes to food and beverage trends. So now about the data. So when we ask, same thing here, so we ask questions to our consumers. This one is from our trend survey in 2022 and 2023. So when we ask if they have socialized more on social media in the past 12 months, so we see that there's an increase in millennials. However, Gen Zs are quite close to the Gen X and just followed by the boomers. So millennials are going to be the ones that are going to be the most active for food and beverage trends on social media. And then on the right side of the screen, when we ask, do you agree with the statement? I follow food and beverage trends on social media. It's quite even between Gen Zs, but millennials still are the most active.
I have a question here then.
Yes.
So, do you think, Sophie, that similarly to what Amanda was pointing out, do you think that Gen Z will surge to where millennials are and beyond as their purchasing power increases?
Personally, I do believe so. It is just because, not to say that, I'll include myself in it because I am a Gen Z, but not because we're ignorant, but we don't know enough about the food industry at large, and we don't know enough about sustainability. So I do believe that as we grow older, yes, we do have more buying power, but we also have more knowledge about this issue. So I do believe it's going to.
And what do you think the food industry can do to help you generationally?
That's a great question. I'd say reach out more and more, especially on the internet. So digitalization is very important. So we look up to online, not just social media, but website as well, to get our information. So more and more information-driven approach online, I would say.
Assertiveness by the part of those manufacturers and those brands. I just want to let everyone know too, I invite you throughout this presentation, if you have a thought or a question, to raise your hand because I will run a mic over to you. So this is an interactive session, so if anything comes to mind during the session, please feel free. You don't have to wait till the end. All right.
And I have more data on that social media stuff. I was going to flip forward, but I think I'll just wait on it. So we'll put a pin on the social media and we'll come back to it. But my next insight is that while I showed that younger generations show that they have a stronger willingness to pay more for eco-social integrity overall, what's really interesting here is that concerns for food waste and animal welfare rise to the top across all generations. It resonates strongly across all generations. I think that's super fascinating, that there is very little differentiation or variability across these generations for food waste and animal welfare. And why I think that's interesting is that when we look at the revolution of where we are today in the natural products industry and the good food movement, animal welfare concerns kind of help birth this movement. There's too many egregious side effects associated with feedlot farming. And animal welfare continues to be an important concern that is trickling down all the way to Gen Z. They want to eat responsibly produced products where livestock are treated fairly and given a good life. Similarly, the pink bars across, over 50% of consumers, from 53% to 57% with little variation, say that they have concern for food waste. And that is really telling. Food waste is constantly in the news. We see it cycling from food waste at the farm gate level, food waste at the retail level, food waste at the consumer household level. So there are many touch points that consumers kind of see this food waste, and it's tied to poor financial management. Food waste is ultimately wasting money, putting money down the drain. And you're a consumer, you're a person who wants to waste money. So this makes sense to consumers, why it really resonates with them, to really look to brands that are showing that they're efficient with their supply chain and doing what they can to mitigate this huge food waste loss that is prevalent in the food system. I love this slide.
We have a question back here, and I'm going to run you the mic.
Hi, I'm just wondering, because food waste is a huge problem. Globally, 33%, one third of the food is wasted. But what do you think is the gap between those consumers being concerned and actually those consumers willing to pay? What is that gap, and what can the industry do to, incentivize consumers to act upon their concerns as well?
What a great question.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the tough thing. I mean, what we do here is a lot of crystal ball analysis, like, right, what consumers are indicating. I mean, what can you message? Can you make sure transparency is kind of the low-hanging fruit. What are you already doing that keeps your price where it is so it's not a huge premium increase? Maybe bring that consumer along that journey first, and then get them familiar with your brand, and then make more dents in the food system once you start making those inroads. I mean, I don't have answers. It's a complex puzzle to really get consumers with aspiration to want to make a difference. But again, we're going to talk more about how to meet those consumers through dynamic storytelling, and how social media is really playing a much more critical role in sharing that journey that brands are taking for their sustainability commitments, because it's not a one-dimensional endpoint. It is a process to get consumers on board before they make that purchase decision. And there are various ways through digital media, through social media, through websites to share that story.
And if I can add, we did have research done on upcycled food. And it was very interesting to see that customers think they should pay less for upcycled food, because in their mind, it's waste anyway, right? So we're saving you money by eating this ingredient. So a majority, I can't remember the exact percentage, but a majority of them think they should pay less.
That's fascinating.
I will comment that, tying that to the prior slides here about generational propensity to pay more for more sustainable products. So we do see some generation, even though we don't see the generational differentiation over here, where we're talking about food waste as a whole, we are looking at a generational difference in terms of the likelihood that someone will pay more, and there are those costs underneath for cleaning up the act and reducing waste behind the scenes, and that also goes to packaging as well. We have a question over here, or a comment.
Was that the U.S. only, these studies? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, U.S.
And it was 2 years ago. So have you done any, somewhat of an update? Like, did the current economical times impact this at all? Or, in fact, are people already doing this and taking the steps?
So we did fresh research on our trends. So we track 41 trends in the natural products industry, and we surveyed consumers back in the spring of these 41 trends, where we give them a definition, a concept, a phrase for them to evaluate. And reducing waste, so we asked them the question, are you likely to purchase a product that is positioned to these trends? It's a yes or no question. And again, it's in this predictive crystal ball space. Like, what do you think as a consumer you're going to prioritize when you go to the grocery store? And our all-trend benchmark average was 22%, and reducing waste was up there at 42%. Consumers say they're likely to prioritize. That's higher than regenerative agriculture. That's higher than organic. Organic, unfortunately, had, much to everybody's frustration, a bit of a contraction because it's a price sensitivity issue with consumers. So with inflation, the rising costs of food, consumers said, I'm going to deprioritize organic. But this upcycling and food waste space, being efficient with resources, we're just continuing to see more touch points with consumers. The fact that they don't want to pay for it is very interesting to me, because one of the benefits for farmers to dig into the food waste space is that if they don't have produce that is attractive to retailers, that is considered food waste, or it goes to a low value market. So the farmer loses out on money because they're selling into a lower value market. So there's still a need to have a premium for these byproduct streams within the food system, because it's the farmer that loses out, and that's such an interesting dynamic to communicate to that consumer of why they should be paying more for efforts to take that product into a higher value market.
I'd like to understand more, but not right
Yeah,
now. I'm not
we
gonna
gotta
dig,
go.
I'm not going to dig too much deeper there, but the systems approach is what is lacking in terms of consumer understanding often.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep, for
So
sure.
that's something else we can dig into.
Yep.
But we're going to go to our next data point right now with Sophie.
Yes. So Gen Z's consumers value flavor ahead of affordability. So I was just waiting for this because we're going to talk a bit about price. So even in the current cost of living crisis. Switch.
Oh, sorry.
Good. Yeah, so as you see across different generation, when we ask, what do you care most about food and beverage? First thing is health benefits. That's across the board in different generations. However, we're going to see that Gen Zs care more about flavor before affordability. Perhaps it's because they don't have to pay rent yet. They're still too young. They have enough money to spend on chocolate bars. Sorry. But millennials, Gen X, and boomers are going to care more about affordability. And then we see that Gen X and boomers are going to care about naturalness. So it's all about a discussion about values and value of the product itself. So perhaps if you orientate your marketing more toward there's a specific health benefit, or there's a reason why you should pay more for this product, then perhaps they will buy it even at a higher price.
Any thoughts? All right, continuing.
Okay. So, as mentioned, while animal welfare was a pioneering concern that I mentioned that kind of ushered in this good food movement, we see younger generations are starting to bring in a little bit more focus to social and labor rights issues. When we asked them to evaluate these statements, again, I'm willing to pay more for products that demonstrate socially responsible practices. We see that tick up from 28% among the oldest generation to 47% among Gen Z. And then when we ask them, fair trade and labor issues impact what I buy, the numbers are a little lower, the pink columns, with 32% for Gen Z. But I feel like there's more awareness that are being expressed by the younger generations for social issues. The reason that fair trade could be a little bit lower is that question is asking a little bit more on what you've actually done. Like, has it really impacted what you buy? And again, we go back to that conundrum of what they're willing to do and what they actually do. And I think that that's where you really bring consumers in through consumer loyalty, which is your messaging around your values and your commitments to then get them to be repeat purchasers.
Why do we think that Gen Z is surging so much farther ahead?
For social values?
Yeah.
I mean, they tend to, what we've seen is eco-social wise, environmentally, socially, they tend to be more aware. They're the digital native group out there, so they have more touch points with information. They're doing more research. They seem to have more stress too. I mean, there's a lot of research, not here, that I've seen by academics about how much burden and guilt younger generations feel about the status of our economic capitalist consumer goods system. So this could be a reaction to that.
I can confirm we have stress. I think it's more about what we've gone through in our lives. So recently we've seen the BLM movement, we've seen the Me Too movement. So those are all things that we have gone through in our formative years. So perhaps that's a reason why we're going to be more interested in social justice.
So coming of age within this period where there's so much change and so many stressors, that just brings it really top of mind. Very, very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how, maybe not yours personally, but how your children generationally experience as well. Okay, let's move to the next data point.
So millennials are going to take the lead in eco-driven actions, while Gen X and Boomers are almost as likely as Gen Z to be fully engaged in environmental action. Next. So as we see previously, millennials are really leading the way in terms of eco-driven action. So Gen Zs and Gen X and Boomers are quite similar, so 18, 17, 16%. So really, if you're targeting someone for eco-driven product, really talk about millennials. So 64% of Gen Zs I have a problem with that word, I'm sorry, I'm French Canadian, conscientiously choose food based on their environmental impacts, while only 7% never do so. And 76% of Gen Zs are going to use reusable water bottle and mug instead of single-use options. So there are things that Gen Zs have grown up to think as normal. I always have my reusable mug and my water bottle with me. Perhaps that's something older generations are not used to. So there's definitely some specific actions that Gen Zs are going to take over millennials or Gen X or Boomers. But overall, millennials take the trophy here.
So if you want to feel younger, carry your own water bottle.
And put stickers on it.
And I know, guilty.
That's funny.
Any thoughts? Any thoughts here? We heard two different perspectives on eco-driven and consciously produced. Seeing the millennials surging ahead here, seeing a little bit surging in the other data set on Gen Z. There's slight differentiation. I mean, I'm going to ask everyone, but I'm going to ask you two also, where you think that point of differentiation is there in terms of conscientiousness, right? That's what that was. Conscientiously choosing, right? Sort of is it a different exposure level, do we think, with millennials there?
For Gen Z, again, yeah, I think it's the exposure and the education. I mean, we're still young. We're 10 to 26-year-old, so that's definitely a big part of it. Perhaps in 10 years, we're going to see different trends. But millennials, they have had the time to learn and to live, and they have kids now. So they have the more exposure to eco-friendly things. Gen X and Boomers, I just think perhaps there's other issues that are more prevalent for them. I do know economic issues are very important for them. So perhaps that's where it comes from.
And I think that the industry is no longer niche anymore, right? So the Gen Z are really growing up in this really loud industry compared to my generation. Gen X was more niche, it was more new and nascent. But it's got a lot of marketplace touch points that consumers are getting more exposure to. Couple that with a lot of the stress and guilt that Gen Z is feeling to bear the burden of all of the horrible things in the world that's happening. God, I'm so pessimistic.
And so eco-driven action and purchasing propensity is more mainstream, is part of what I hear.
Yeah.
More accessible. Okay, so let's go to the next data point.
So as we mentioned, and Sophie alluded to this before about food and beverage, but social media as a source of sustainability information is increasing with each younger generation. And this goes to different research that we conducted specifically for the purpose of where do consumers find information about sustainability? How are they engaging with it? We looked at grocery retail stores, product packaging, social media, and this chart compares social media with product packaging, the blue columns being product packaging, the pink being social media, where younger generation, it's a graceful stair-step pattern up to the younger generation leaning on social media for information. There is a stress point that happens when a consumer goes to make a purchase decision. It's stressful. am I going to get value for this product if I spend my money on it? So there's a lot of price point considerations that factor into there. It's not a great time to really message the values. They need to be more receptive to values at a time when they're less stressed, and that could be scrolling social media when they're not making that purchase. And this is where digital dynamic storytelling is really coming into play to build up that consumer loyalty with your customers.
So not only generation, but age. So we might even see some progression in terms of just as people mature and their purchasing propensity. So let's move to the next data point. And I'm just going to keep us moving a little bit so we don't run out of time.
Yeah. So boomers are more concerned about keeping an active mind when it comes to healthy aging, and mental health is important to all generations. So healthy aging is something that we've seen come up more and more through time, and different generations have a different meaning of healthy aging. So younger generations might be a bit more vain. They want to stay beautiful for longer, whereas older generations are going to think more about keeping an active mind and staying physically active and trying to prevent the inevitable decline of their bodies. So as we can see, Gen Zs, they think about keeping looks and appearance and keeping socially connected. Gen Zs have also grown up in the pandemic, right? So social connection is very important for them. Millennials, preserving looks and appearance. Gen X and boomers are going to think about keeping active mind and physical well-being.
All right, so we have quite a few additional data points, and I know we don't have too much time, so we're going to keep it moving, but I'll be watching. If you have a question or a comment, I will run the mic to you, but we're gonna keep the slides going forward.
Another insight is that the motivations for buying organic products could be shifting towards a benefit for the planet as well as the benefit for me, as we're seeing this gap close among younger generations. Organic has done a great job of messaging the what's in it for me benefit of organic products. Less pesticides, less toxins, less bad for you ingredients. And we're seeing that this, how consumers think about buying organic, the gap is closing, whereas 35% of Gen Z say it's because it's better for me compared to 33% because it's better for the planet. And there's a lot of movement and chaos in the marketplace right now. A lot of trade organizations and brands and certifications really trying to lean in and better capitalize on how to message organic for both. There's research, testing going out there for the nutritional benefits of better soil through organic. And then they're looking to make their messaging more impactful around the environmental benefits of organic. And so we're seeing that hopefully latch on, particularly as many consumers in the marketplace are expressing a lot more concern for environmental issues now with the younger generation, particularly around climate and carbon mitigation.
So if you're in the organic space, you've really got to tie your messaging together with the sustainability and the value basis messaging that is resonating with consumers, particularly younger consumers. Let's move along.
So value-driven demand is here to stay, as today's parents, so the millennials and Gen X, are shaping the generations to come. So when we say, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? I believe the food and beverage industry is accountable for taking action, standing up for values and belief. Again, we're going to see the millennials average higher than the other generations, but we can see that it's still quite high for everyone. Gen X are just following right behind the millennials, so parents are going to be more pushing of the companies to be accountable for anything that's action-driven. And then I believe my food and beverage choices largely reflects my values and belief. So we can see overall just a bit less. So we can see that consumers are wanting companies to take the first action and the first step into being eco-friendly or any environmentally claim you wish. whereas personal, they want to take a bit less of the blame. So we can see overall that they're responding a bit lower. But again, the same tendency happens here. So millennials and Gen X are higher than the other generations.
So many little questions. We're going to keep it going. We're just going to take about 3 or 4 minutes extra before we wrap it up. And I know that you'll both be available if people have questions for you afterwards. And we'll also have this recorded as well too, so people can check in with these slides as well.
So last point from my side is the health halo effect of gluten-free is waning among generations, particularly Gen Z, as organic and natural become a more important factor of what they're tracking and really observing that they're purchasing according to these quality buckets. So we look at gluten compared to non-GMO, compared to organic ingredients and natural ingredients. Gen Z ticks way down for gluten at 29%, and then natural ingredients is most important across all generations. And of course, that's a squishy space of natural ingredients. How exactly are you messaging it? What does it mean? How are they interpreting it? I would say the additional takeaway here is that Gen Z are evaluating their health and wellness less through tactical diet trends and physical attributes, but they're more looking at a broad, holistic experience, and it's really emotional for them. So they're checking in with themselves, like, how do I feel? Do I feel good? Am I balanced? Do I have good energy? As opposed to really, oh, I'm eating paleo as my energy increased. They're not subscribing to one lifestyle diet. They're kind of picking and choosing, all in response to paying attention to their emotional health and really paying attention to how they feel, as opposed to measuring, like with facts, how they feel.
Amazing. Yeah, the emotional factor is so powerful, and tuning into that in younger generations. And Sophie.
Gen Z show bias towards concern for the future more than the present. So that corresponds a little bit to when we talked about stress. So Gen Zs think that there's and the doom is coming and the end of the world is going to come. So we can see here on the screen that they under-index for personal finance, healthcare, and personal data and security. So they are not so worried about this. Perhaps it's because they have grown up in a time where it wasn't as much an issue as it was perhaps in the older generations. However, job availability is going to be the #1 concern. Perhaps also it's because they are coming of age, they're finishing college, or they're finishing high school, and the first thing on their mind is going to be job availability. Disrupted education, again, they're most likely still in school, and this one was interrupted by COVID. And finally, feeling isolated. So it always comes down to what the generation has gone through in their formative year. Pandemic again, so they were isolated from everyone they knew. So yeah.
All right. Do you have another slide? Okay, good. Not good, but I mean, love the information and love the data. Again, this is all being recorded, and you will have access to this. And I can see that there's a question. I just want to say we have to keep it short because we have to wrap, because we have another session, Mission Possible, coming up soon. So we all need more time for these things, I think.
I'll be very quick. I agree with almost everything, because I do think that things have impacted. But if you take away the label for the different generations, and I would say as a Gen Xer, wouldn't you agree that as one generation falls into that next age group segment, those priorities will change? I mean, boomers were all hippies eating granola and trying to save the world, and anti-Vietnam, and now those are the last things on their mind. So, and the millennials, I'm just asking, do you agree? Because, I mean, millennials are all parents now, and so that's why they're freaking out about their food. I did that 15 years ago as a Gen Xer. So do you agree that that can all change if you get rid of the labels and just look at the age span?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think where they are in their life stage can make a huge impact on how you make those decisions. And I think, sure, I'm a retired baby boomer, and I just kind of want to opt out and not worry. That yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and you're as old as you feel. I'm a late stage boomer. I have a Gen Zer and a millennial kid too. So, however, all these different things that influence your value system. So I thank you both, Sophie and Amanda, today, and we thank you all for coming over here to the FiNA stage all the way at the end of the Supply Side Hall. And please stick around if you're interested in further education here. We're going to keep it rolling through the day, and have a great show. Enjoy the show.